Have a good evening, student. Welcome our channel, The Physics Point. And this is the lecture number 2 of the chemical reactions and equations. In the previous lectures, we have just discussed what are the chemical reactions, how it can be write, and just to solve some problems to write in the chemical equations. There are two methods to write in the chemical equations. One is the word equations, and another one is the chemical equations. Chemical equations, it is the equations in which we have written the chemical reaction in the form of or with the help of chemical symbols or symbol of the elements which are involved in the chemical equations. And this is the lecture number 2. And in these lectures, we have discussed about the balance the chemical equations. Balance the chemical equations. Please take the heading, that is the balance the chemical equations. The given chemical equations, how we can balance, and there are some steps. When we are follow that amount of the steps, then we solve the given unbalanced equations or balance the given unbalanced equations. Consider when the sodium hydroxide, or the example, when the sodium hydroxide is react with sodium hydroxide. These examples is given in the books. The sodium hydroxide is react with sulfuric acid. Is react with sulfuric acid to give when the sodium hydroxide is react with the sulfuric acid give sodium sulfate and water. And this is equations. In the first lectures, we just discussed about the when the equations is written in the form of word. This is known as the word equations. If I want to write this equation in the symbolic form or chemical form, this is the chemical equation. The first will return this equation in the chemical form. What is the sodium hydroxide? The symbol of sodium hydroxide is NaOH. Is react with sulfuric acid, that is H2SO4, to gives sodium sulfate, that is Na2SO4 plus water. Then this is the first step to return or balance the chemical equations. If the equations are given in the word form, this equation must be written in the chemical form. This is the first step. What is the step 1? Step 1. Write the given chemical equation. Given equation in chemical form. Given equation in chemical equation form. Given equation in chemical equation form. First solve these problems, and after for the practice we are solving 2 or more problems. That is the smallest little promise. First of all, write the given equations in the chemical equations form. We must be write like that. Then the sodium hydroxide. This is the chemical formula or symbol of the sodium hydroxide is react with the sulfuric acid. H2SO4 is the chemical formula of sulfuric acid to give sodium sulfate, that is Na2SO4 is the sodium sulfate and H2O is the water. The all reactants and compounds are written in the chemical form. This equation is called as the chemical equations. The word equations are converted into the chemical equation. This is the first step for the balancing the chemical equations. That is the step 2. What is the step 2? First of all, identify the given chemical equations are balanced or not. Or not. If the given chemical equation is balanced, we solve our problem already. Then we decide to work on it. If the given equations are unbalanced, then we follow the one by one steps. Second step, identify the given chemical equations. The given chemical equation balanced or not. Balanced or not. Then how we identify the given chemical equations are balanced or not? With the help of counting the number of atoms of each element which are included in the reactant and products. The step to identify the given chemical equations are balanced or not. First of all, the counting the number of atoms of each element which are included in the reactant and product or in the chemical equations. For the identify, we make one of the smallest table. Write the above equations as in sodium hydroxide is react with sulfuric acid, that is H2SO4, gives sodium hydroxide, or sorry, sodium sulfate plus water. How much elements are taken a part of these chemical equations? These are the sodium, oxygen, hydrogen, sulfur. These are the five: sodium, oxygen, hydrogen, and sulfur. These are the four chemicals or four elements which are taken the part of these chemical equations. Sodium, oxygen, hydrogen. These are the hydrogen, sulfur, again oxygens. First of all, make the table. The table is as like this. There are three columns. First, name of the elements, and second, number of that elements in the reactant, and third one, number of that elements in a product. The first one, name of elements. There are the element, and second one, number of atom in reactant, and second, number of atom in product. First, that is what is this? Sodium. Second one, hydrogen, oxygen, and sulfur. These are the four chemicals or four elements which are taken a part of these chemical reactions. We are following the second step. Identify the chemical equations are balanced or not. If the chemical equation is balanced, the number of atoms of each element in the reactant and products must be same. Let's counting the number of sodium atoms in the reactant. The sodium atom in the reactants are where the chemicals which are before the arrows. That is, this is sodium. Sorry, only single elements or single atom of sodium elements in the reactants. Let us calculate the number of sodium atoms in the product. There are two sodium atoms in the product, not another product. That is, there are two sodium atoms in the product. This is the step number 2. And third, next one, hydrogen. Let us count the number of hydrogen in reactant. This is the single hydrogen, and these are the two total hydrogen atoms in the reactants are 3. There are 3 hydrogen atoms in the reactants, and the number of hydrogen atoms in the product 2. Only 2 hydrogen atoms in the product. Then third one, oxygen. Let us count the number of oxygen atoms in the reactant. That is 1 and 4. There are 5 number of oxygen in the reactants, and number of oxygen in the product 4 plus 1. There are 5 number of oxygen in the product. Then last one, sulfur. Let us count the number of sulfur atoms in the reactant. There is only single sulfur atom in the reactants, and again only single sulfur atom in the product. That means, first of all, let's find the balance. The given equations are balanced or not. When the given equation is balanced, that means the number of atoms, sodium, hydrogen, oxygen, and sulfur, all elements having the similar number of atoms in the reactants and products. But in these equations, number of sodiums and hydrogens are different. They have different atoms in the reactant and product. That means these above chemical equations is unbalanced. There are sodium and hydrogen elements are unbalanced. That means the number of sodium atoms in the reactant and product and number of hydrogen atoms in the reactant and product are indifferent in number. That means the above chemical equation is unbalanced. Step number 3. Third step. And now try to balance these chemical compounds which are included more number of atoms or elements, and try to balance try to balance the chemical compound. Try to balance the chemical compound which having more number of atoms or elements, more number of atoms or elements. Now let us calculate the number of atoms included in the chemical reactions, chemical compounds. Total 4 chemical compounds are included in the chemical reactions. 2 are reactants and 2 are products. Let us calculate or count the number of atoms or the chemical compounds which having the greater number of atoms or which included greater number of atoms. The first there are first reactant, there are one sodium atom, one oxygen and one hydrogen. There are 3 atoms in the first reactant. The second one, 2 hydrogen atom, 1 sulfur atom and 4 oxygen atom. That means they included 7 number of chemicals or 7 number of atoms. Then the third one, 2 sodium, 1 sulfur, that means 3 and 4 oxygen. They have again 7 number of atoms in that chemical compound, and these are the 3. But this is not a correct method or correct step. Try to balance these chemical compounds which having the more number of atoms or elements which are unbalanced. First of all, which are unbalanced. They have 2 atoms or 2 elements are unbalanced, sodium and hydrogen. The more number of sodium and hydrogens are included in the first reactant, that is 1 sodium and 1 hydrogen. And another, when the second product, they have included only 2 sodium atoms, not a hydrogen. But in the first reactor, they included both unbalanced elements, sodium as well as hydrogen. That means balance this chemical compound. That is, the sodium hydroxide plus sulfuric acid gives sodium sulfate Na2SO4 plus H2O, that is water. Then there are 2 number of products. There are 2 sodium atoms in the product and only single sodium atom in the reactant, and only 2 hydrogen atoms in the product. There are 3 hydrogen atoms in the reactant. First of all, try to balance the sodium atoms or sodium element in reactant and product. That means the sodium atom in the reactants must be half of the sodium atom in the product. That means multiply the sodium atom in the reactants by 2 or double, that is 2 NaOH plus H2SO4. There are most important rule. If you doesn't multiply 2 only for sodium, you must be multiply all over chemical compound or all over reactants, because we just multiply or balance the chemical compound, not only single element or not only single atom. Then gives Na2SO4 plus H2O. If we give or we multiply or divide, just only multiply. If we multiply any numbers to the any reactants or product, then again count the number of atoms of each element in the reactant and product, make a table. Let's start. Then as similar, the table is as similar which we make in the previous step. That is, there are 3 columns. First column for element, second column for the number of that element in the reactant, and third for the number of that elements in the products. I will use the short form E for the elements, R for number of that elements in the reactant, and P for number of that elements in the product. Then there are 4 elements. One is sodium, hydrogen, oxygen and sulfur. How many number of sodium atoms in the reactants? There are two sodium atoms. And how many number of sodium atoms in product? That is equal to 2. Now second one, how many number of hydrogen atoms in the reactant? There are 2 into 1, 2 hydrogen, and 2 plus 2 is 4. There are 4 hydrogen in the reactant and only 2 hydrogen in the product. Then third one, oxygen, 2 plus 4, there are 6 oxygen in the reactant and only 5 oxygen in the product. Then sulfur is the same. Sulfur doesn't changes in the reactant and product. One sulfur in reactant and one sulfur in the product. And now try to identify, or let us see in the given chemical equations are balanced or not. The given chemical equations are balanced, that means they have similar number of atoms of each element in the reactant and product. If not, that means the given equation is partially balanced. The number of sodium atoms in the reactant and products are same, that means the sodium elements is balanced. The number of hydrogen atoms in the reactants and products are different, that means hydrogens are again unbalanced. First of all, when we try to balance the one elements, that means the another elements are gets unbalanced. Doesn't worry about it. Then second one, the oxygen is again unbalanced and sulfur is balanced. That means in this step, hydrogen and oxygens are again unbalanced, remain unbalanced. The given chemical equations are not unbalanced, not properly unbalanced, not balanced, or intermediate between the balanced and unbalanced. This is called as the partially balanced equation. Let us give the number of these equations. This is the equation number 2, and equation number 2 is the partially balanced equation, not completely balanced or not completely unbalanced. There are 3 to 4 steps you must be followed to balancing the chemical equations. First of all, step 1, write the given chemical equations or write the given word equation in the form of chemical equation. This is the first method. Then second one, identify the given chemical equations are balanced or not. How it can be identified? Let's count the number of atoms of each element which are included in the reactant and product. If they both are same, that means the given chemical equations are balanced. If they both are not the same, that means the given chemical equations are unbalanced. And if the given chemical equation is unbalanced, then try to balance the chemical compounds which having the more number of atoms or elements which are already unbalanced or different in number of the reactant in the reactant and product. That is NaOH and H2SO4. These are the chemical reactions. In that reaction, sodium and hydrogens are get unbalanced. And sodium and hydrogen both are involved in the first reactant. That's why I will be multiply 2 by the first equations, first reactant in this equation. Then if I balance the sodium and again the oxygen is previously balanced. In the previous condition, oxygen is balanced. That means the number of atoms of oxygen in reactant and products are same. But now the oxygens are get unbalanced. And in after that equations, after the multiplication of 2 of the first reactant, hydrogen and oxygens are gets unbalanced. Now try to balance the hydrogen and oxygen. That means identify these chemical compounds which are involved in these chemical reactions which involve both hydrogen and oxygen simultaneously, or and find this chemical or find reactants or products which having the both unbalanced elements. And this equations is, and we will again write the above chemical equations, that is 2NaOH. This equation is called as partially balanced equation, and H2SO4 sulfuric acid gives Na2SO4 plus H2O. Now there are two elements are unbalanced, hydrogen and oxygen. First of must be balanced or find the chemical compounds which are involved both unbalanced elements. The first which is involved the hydrogen and oxygen both, but sodium extra elements are involved. If I try to balance these equations, then sodium gets unbalanced. Okay, this is the most of risky. Second, when I try to balance The second reactants, hydrogen and oxygen both are involved, but sulfur is extra amount involved, or extra elements must be involved in the chemical reactants. If I disturb this one chemicals, the whole equations are gets disturbed, or the number of sulfur which is already balanced, they again gets unbalanced. But if you only have two elements, hydrogen and oxygen, they both are unbalanced, then this is the fourth chemicals or the second products which having only two elements, they both are unbalanced. Okay, then try to multiply by 2, multiply the second product by 2, that is new equation is 2NaOH plus H2SO4 gives Na2SO4 plus 2H2O. Because this is only single chemical compounds which having the all number of unbalanced equation, unbalanced elements, hydrogen and oxygen, all terms are gets balanced. Now identify the above equations or new prepared equations are balanced or not. Now the make the table as similar to previous step. I think the above equation gets balanced. First column for the element, second column for the number of that elements in the reactant, and third for the number of atoms of that elements in the product. First of all, sodium, oxygen, hydrogen, and sulfur. You maybe change the sequence of the elements. How many number of sodium in reactant and product? We doesn't disturb of sodium atom. That means they are same above previous time. And we doesn't disturb the sulfur. That means sulfur have same. But we disturb number of hydrogen and number of oxygen atoms in the reactant and product. Now we doesn't disturb any in the reactant. That means the number of atoms of each element in the reactants are same as per previous table, that is 4 and 6. Now we just multiply 2 to the water molecules in the product, that is now count the number of hydrogen in the product, that is 2 into 2, 4 hydrogen. This is the third point, 4 hydrogens, and it's not a 6. Hydrogen is 4, oxygen is 6. Now number of oxygens 2, and 2 into 1, that is 2. 2 plus 4 is, that is 6. 6 oxygen atoms in the reactant and products. Now the above chemical equations, above unbalanced chemical equations now balanced. This is called as the balanced equation. There are some steps to balance the chemical equations. The smallest example I try to solve, if the P4, 4 potassium, phosphorus is react with the oxygen atoms to give P2O3. Now there are 4 number of phosphorus in the reactant and 2 number of oxygen in the product. First of all, the given chemical equations are unbalanced. Identify the given chemical equations are balanced or not. Because the first step one doesn't need, because a given chemical equations it must be written in the chemical equation form. That means it doesn't need to write this is in chemical equation form or chemical symbolic form. Now try to identify the given chemical equations are balanced or not, because the number of phosphorus atom in the reactants are 4 and number of oxygen atoms in the reactants are 2, and number of phosphorus atoms in the products are 2 and number of oxygen atoms in the products are 3. That means the above chemical or given chemical equation is unbalanced. It doesn't need to make a table. Then P4 plus O2 gives 2P2O3. Now phosphorus is gets balanced, but oxygen is again unbalanced. Now P4 plus O2 gives 2P2O3. How many oxygen? There are 6 oxygens, but here only 2 oxygen. That means we multiply 4 3. That is 3 O2. gives 2P2O3. Now, for the homework, you must be balance these chemical equations. NH3, 2NH3 react with HCl gives NH4Cl. Balance these chemical equations. Okay, this is the lecture number 2, and in this lecture number 3, we must be discuss the types of chemical reactions. Okay, let's stop here.